Hi, welcome to Cursed. I'm Josh or Bones, and today I'm joined by Vincent Higginbotham. You have a new book coming out, and for those who aren't familiar, I think you've been doing some podcasts, but if you'll introduce yourself to the people that listen.
Yeah. Hey everybody. My name is Vinny, or Vincent Higginbotham officially, but I like the name Vinny. And yeah, I have a book coming out. It's called How Witchcraft Saved My Life: Practical Advice for Transformative Magic. It is published by Llewellyn worldwide, or Llewellyn Books, on Instagram, and it should release of this year. So, and I have done a couple podcasts, but not many at this point.
Okay.
So you're like number 3, which is kind of cool. Actually, it's like, synchronistic.
Right. Yeah, it was. I think you had sent me your not rough draft. The the PDF of the book to read and stuff, and that was at like a time where I didn't know if the podcast would continue, and then was able to keep it, got it going through the end of the fall, and I think it was you that reminded me, like, hey, by the way, and it's like, oh yeah, I want to try to get you in before it releases, and so hopefully we're doing that well enough to get some hype around it.
Right. Yeah, actually, so when I first reached out to you, I was like, well, let's just see, because I was reaching out to all kinds of people to get blurbs. And like, for those who don't know, in the publishing world, when you've written a book, kind of after the acquisition editor is like, okay, it's a go, like you've done your revisions, and it's like kind of your second or maybe third version of your book, with all of the changes that they want made, you can then send it out to people. So it's like unedited, essentially, because there could be like mistakes and stuff in it. But that's what I originally sent you. Hopefully there weren't a lot of mistakes. And then yeah, I was just like, hey, take and read this, because I had known about your podcast. Like, I listen, obviously. And I was like, I just want these people to like my book and maybe like say good things about it. And then when I reached out, I was just trying to find out, like, hey, did you get to read it? Like, what did you think? And you were like, I want to have you on the show. I'm like, oh, I didn't even consider that. I was just like, whatever, I'll send it out to people. And you're like, let's have you on the show. I'm like, that's a good idea. So, but yeah, and it is in perfect timing, actually. So
Yeah, because I think you're now working with Meg and Witch with Me and all that too. So it kind of works out. It's all
that's your fault, actually. So like when I reached out to you, you were like, you should talk to Meg. And I had just started following her. Like, I had been paying attention to Witch with Me since Gather the Witches. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, let me pay attention to them. And then I had just started following Meg. And I hadn't even, I think, had a conversation with her. I was just following her. And I think that she followed me back. And then you were like, you should talk to Meg. I was like, I should talk to Meg. I was like, I don't even know what I need to talk to Meg about, but I should talk to Meg. And like, you gave me this really good direction of like, you should talk to Meg. And then I did. And since then, now I'm like writing reviews for the Witch with Books. And actually, Meg and I just started a book club that launches. We technically launched now. We're getting subscribers for the first month of June. So we're going to be reading for the book club. Book readers have an option to read Intuitive Witchcraft or Life Ritualized by like really great authors, so like both these books are awesome, and I'm getting to like interact with other authors too. So like meeting Meg at your direction has really like seriously enhanced my life at this point.
Well, that's good, because I thought, well, I'm going to do my best, but I know Meg has been reaching out to me to interview people, and I've done a few things around Witch with Me. My other podcast, Hex Files, did Together the Witches, and we do their Witch with TV series, which we've been so busy and had so much stuff come up that we haven't released one in a minute. But That should come before this, but it's been a lot of fun, and she's got so many good connections and so many resources. It's so nice to hear you kind of connect and like have a spot and all this stuff. Like I just see all the new book club stuff popping up. I got the emails. So it's kind of nice to see that like that little relationship kind of just blossom. In passing. I was just like, oh, she'll help plug your book, I'm sure. But that's so cool. They're great over there, Meg.
They really are. Like, listen, Meg is quick as a whip, dude. Like, it's just ridiculous. She is just on it all the time. And she's got a really good mind for what she's doing. And then Louisa's great also. And like everyone on the team is really great. So, and I already know Serendipity and Key from, you know, having been in the witchcraft community for a while. And so them being part of it was just more reason to pay attention to Witch with me. And then to know that they're doing so much with them and like have no issues made it even more, I guess, easy for me to be like, hey, Meg, let's do things together. And so like, yeah, but really because you gave the direction, you were like, hey, you should do this. I'm like, I should do this. So
and for some reason, Meg is like, oh, I trust their opinion for some reason. For now, she does, but that might change.
I mean, I doubt it. I doubt it'll change. Like,
the craziest thing I need to do is she's so busy, but the one thing I need to do is actually have her on Curse, talk about her book, talk about all this other stuff. But yeah,
have you read her book?
No, I have yet to.
It's so good.
It's in my list of have to reads, and that's
my list.
Why I'm scared to ask her so far, because I'm like,
Listen, it was on my list for a while and I was like, oh, I got to get to this. I got to get to this. And I do this thing while I'm working. I can listen to books on tape and like I'm attention deficit, which I really don't think is a deficit. I think it's a gift, but I have to do multiple things at a time or I can't function at all. Like I can't focus unless there's multiple things that I have to focus on. And so listening to books is a really great way to do that. And so I listened to Meg's book quite a few times actually, and it is just like chock full of really practical spells for healing, and not just like healing yourself, but healing relationships, healing the earth, healing all kinds of things. And not to like gas, you know, Meg up hard or anything, but like she deserves it. So I don't mind doing it. Like the book is really worth reading. So get to that for sure. Right.
Yeah. That's as much as we'll talk about Meg because she's not paying for a sponsor spot. No, I'm kidding. But, I blamed Corey because I was spending so much time reading Corey's book, which is like this encyclopedia of folk magic that it's definitely pushed the other ones back. But no, I was able to read yours. And when I read the title, I was like, oh, this is going to involve some shit, like some personal shit. Because you don't name a book, How Witchcraft Saved My Life, and it be like just, you know, a walk in the park kind of 101 stuff. So with your book, you do share like every chapter involves a nice little setup. You give like a good little a section about your story, things you wish you would have known or knew and learned it. And then like good journaling ideas. I'm a horrible journaler. I don't know if that would ever help me, but I just don't have the attention span to journal, but I probably should. Right. And then like with some of the practical like uses and stuff. And I really liked how it was set up. So with all that being said, what made you think I need to write this? Like I have to put this book out in the world of witchcraft?
Dude, that's such a big question. So it all started back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth. No, like when I was 8 years old, I knew that, I don't know why I knew, but I knew that I was put on the earth to deliver a message. And I never knew what that message was. And like, as a kid, I was always super attracted to Hermes. And like, my family's very Catholic. And so deity worship wasn't a thing, but I was really into Hermes and I didn't understand why. And then throughout my life, that always stayed. Like I have wings tattooed to my ankles and all kinds of stuff. And then he's a messenger, right?
Yeah.
So I just always kind of felt really attracted to this idea of Hermes as a deity in some form or fashion throughout my life. So at 8 years old, I'm like, oh yeah, I love Hermes. He's a messenger. I'm here to deliver a message. And like, I don't know why an 8-year-old thinks the things that they do, but now God, like 32 years later, I have a book coming out. and I was like, I'm gonna write a book one day. And now I'm working on my second book and planning my third and doing all this stuff that like writers do, right? And so I never knew what I was gonna write about, but somewhere around, I don't know, 30, 33, somewhere in that realm, I started realizing that my life was a good book. And I always thought, okay, well, I'll write memoirs because I'm a big fan of like Augustine Burroughs and people like that. But then I'm also a really big fan of people like Chuck Palahniuk because I like the way that they talk in their books.
Oh my
And
God. Yes.
yeah, like they're great, right? Um, and so I just always thought that I'd do either memoir or fiction and that it would be really great, like either one of them, right? Because they're kind of like my writing gods, my writing idols, let's say. Um, and so I don't know, like randomly, I had the opportunity to go to Mystic South for the first and only at this point, but hopefully next year if
Yeah,
everything
hopefully.
gets suited out, right? Like I got to go to it, and Llewellyn was doing pitches. Heather Green, who's my acquisition editor, is fucking awesome. She's just a phenomenal person. And let me just say, like, while gassing up other people, because I believe in giving out gratitude and talking up other people, Heather Green is like not only an acquisitions editor, but also a writer. So she knows like both sides. And so it's just, she's really helpful, right? And so when I went to this pitch that they were having at the conference, I sat down and I was like, well, I don't really know. Like I was not prepared as one should be. But I was like, I want to write about how witchcraft relates to my life and the life that I've lived. Like I've had trauma and I've healed and I'm fine. And like, you know, I'm good. And witchcraft has a lot to do with that. And she was like, okay, well, like send me some stuff. Here's my email. And so I sent her out like things and she was like, you're a good writer. So that's always nice to hear. And then I sent her out kind of, I don't know, like 2 chapters of what I was working on. She's like, this isn't going to work, but this is what I see. And then she really gave like this excellent direction. She was like, it has to be about like witchcraft more than your life, obviously, because that's what we publish. I'm like, yeah, well, this makes sense. And so just through some, you know, gentle guidance, she helped guide me toward this story that happened. So I guess like it kind of became born from the idea of I'm going to do this. You know what I mean? Like there was a necessity for it, and that's how it happened. If that makes sense.
Yeah, this is exactly. I had Mortellus on and have become friends with them, and this is exactly what happened to them. They went to Mystic South, talked to Llewellyn. Yeah, hopefully, because Mystic South is not that far from me either. And
right
here I was like, oh, found out about it and gonna go. It was pandemic time, and so yeah, so hopefully next year there'll be a Mystic South because I feel like there's plenty of people to meet there. I don't know that, which we joke about writing a book with Hex Files about our stupid adventures, but I was like, yeah, apparently you go to Mystic South, you get roped into a book deal with Llewellyn.
That's so funny. I mean, well, that's not necessarily the only way. Like, I
Oh, of
guess,
course.
you know, they're always interested in hearing what you got to pitch. Especially like if you have a direct line to an acquisitions editor, like they'll pay attention to you, they'll listen, they'll hear you out, and they'll tell you if it's bad. Like they'll be like,
Right.
no, this won't
Well,
work, but we see this. And like, you know, like if you're able to take the guidance and like follow the formula, essentially, like you can get there. And I mean, like, why not? Why not write about your crazy adventures
well,
with Hex Files?
I think it's a good practice that they are so open to different aspects. It's not just let's pump
Right.
out the same book over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of good stuff that's coming out and has come out recently. So
Right.
it's nice. I'm sure it's exciting to be like involved with all of that. And now that you said you're planning a second and a third, it's kind of
Yeah.
crazy. It's like I feel like that's what Mortellus was talking about too. It's kind of like they didn't plan on writing one and then boom, now they've got a couple. So
Yeah.
that's so awesome to hear though. And I know you probably can't talk about those, but if you can, and of
I
course
mean,
when
I
they
can
come
talk a
out,
little bit. I can talk a little bit about it. Yeah.
yeah.
The one that I'm working on now, I'm actually in revisions with. And I'm working on it with Martha Kirby Capo. She does like the editing and whatnot for the Agora on Pathos. Hagen. She's a phenomenal co-worker or co-writer or whatever you want to call it. Like, I just love her to death. And we tell each other that we're our writing lobsters all the time, like, which comes from Friends. Did you ever see Friends?
Some of it, yes, but I'm not
Okay.
the
Well,
I'm
Rachel
not
and
the
Ross are each
aficionado.
other's lobsters in Friends. Like, it's just a thing. And so she was like, we're each other's lobsters. And I was like, writing lobsters. And now, like, we constantly send pictures of lobsters to each other.
Nice.
Like, it's weird. But like, yeah, we're in the middle of revisions on that. And I won't give too much away about that book, but that's what's happening now. And then the third book that I have planned is totally under wraps because I'm still developing it.
Well, as far as this one's concerned, there's so many good kind of bit like I'm drawn to obviously the parts where you talk about protection and setting boundaries, because I think everybody could stand to reevaluate and set new boundaries and reevaluate some others. Somebody that learned that really well last year, and in relationship and work and all this other stuff. But as far as that goes, there was one part, and now it slips my fucking mind, that I was gonna say, like, that was such a good idea. I've never thought of it that way, and maybe it'll come back to me because
hopefully
that's how my shit goes.
because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right, there was fuck. I'll think about it.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, did you find it hard to like share some of that personal story? Is that something that you thought, well, fuck it, I'm just gonna put it all in this book? Or was it like, I have to get this out for others, or for just my self catharsis kind of?
I think like it wasn't really cathartic, honestly, because I've always been that person who's like, this is my life and I will share it unabashedly. I'm completely transparent. Like, I believe in transparency. I want other people to be transparent with me. In fact, when people are not transparent with me, I don't get it. I don't understand. I don't catch on to like social cues and stuff like that. I'm just maybe I'm dumb or something, but like, I just don't get it. Like, I need people to be as direct and forthcoming as they can with me because that's the only thing I'm going to get. Like, I'm very much like, my heart is on my sleeve, my everything is on my sleeve. And so in writing the book, like writing the really personal parts, that was very easy for me. Um because I always knew that that's what I'm here to do. Like, based off of kind of all the traumas that I've experienced in my life, um, and survived every time. I knew that I'm surviving these things and going through these things like cancer and living with HIV, or like being homeless for a decade and abuse and like all of these things that I've like gone through and lived through, and suicide attempts and everything, right? Like, I got through it because somebody out there needs to know that they can. And so that's just always been my mission, to make sure that they know they're not alone and that they can make it. Because if I did, I mean, like, anybody can. Like, I'm a high school dropout who like went to college after I was homeless for a decade. In fact, going to college is really what got me out of being homeless. So like, it's possible, and I want people to know that they have the sovereignty to pull it off. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so kind of the harder part was identifying. So like, it wasn't like I knew the witchcraft to like help myself then. You know what I mean? Like, my whole life, like, you've read the book, so like, I'm constantly bombarded by witches. There's witches throughout my life.
I know. I was
But
reading that and like, oh my God, you've like these big moments, these witches pop up and change the
right,
course.
every time. And that is why witchcraft saved my life. It's not because I did magic that like rescued me. It's because witches showed up and they're like, I got you. Let me help you out here. Let me like get you off the street. Let me like do a protection spell for you against your abuser. Let me, like, do this to help you in this way. And it's just every time. Right. And
That's
so like,
so
that's how witchcraft saved my life.
that's so Hecatean too. Like,
It really is.
to have these little like maybe crossroad moments, or like when you talk about the liminal spaces and stuff, and that's where it kind of happens.
Yeah.
It's
like, the witches were the torches. They like
yeah.
they like showed me the path. They're
Not
like,
to
oh, you
mention,
want
like,
3 roads here? This is
right,
the one you want.
with the mentions of abuse and addiction and homelessness. I mean, I've said it before on the podcast too, and you mentioned, I mean, Hecate is this goddess or deity of the marginalized,
Oh
and
yeah.
I think those individuals, whether they decide to work with her or find that they are called to her, or that she's just been kind of leading, like there's nothing easy about working with certain deities for some people, but then there's the darker ones in that idea of, well, the people I know that she gravitates towards or has a really have close relationships to do have trauma in their past. And I'm not saying that that's like, like you said,
it's not a prerequisite, but
right. A lot of people do, but I feel there's an understanding or a call that involves her that your eyes are open to if you have suffered in those realms of things. Not that you have to, but I feel like your view and like your connection to everything is skewed a little bit in her direction already, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, yeah, like if you experience a life of trauma or just even any trauma, and let's like just go ahead and put this out there, like trauma can be anything. Trauma can be puberty for some people, you know, and like for others, it could just be like, oh, my dad used to beat me, or, or it could be super extreme, like constant sexual assault, bad relationships, all kinds of things are trauma, and everyone's trauma is equal, right? And so I think that people who experience a lot of trauma know the underworld in a way that I don't think that everybody does, like I don't think that everyone looks at life and is like, I'm in hell, and is like, but this is okay. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think a lot of people are in the underworld and they're like, oh, fuck. But that was never my approach. I was always just like, all right, well, this is where we're at. This is what we're doing. And we're going to just truck on through.
Yeah.
And I think that is really what, like, if I look back at my life, I think Hecate was always there. Right. But, like Hermes was always there too for me. And so in that way, he was just kind of my guide through the underworld while I learned my way. And then once I found my way out and I was like able to transcend realms, that's when Hecate came in, when I was like not just in the one realm anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of, well, what's weird is, so I feel the same way as like after growing up and finding witchcraft and working with Hecate in my mid 20s. I look back and I think, well, it's hindsight just 2020, but it does seem that there were these times that kind of led me here, and that I was already kind of on that path, even though I didn't call it a certain thing.
Yes.
And what's weird is my younger brother, he felt a call to Hermes, and we had started talking, and I knew there were some connections, but it was after communicating and talking with him that finding out all these connections between Hermes and Hecate, and even down to like how our familiars interact with us and deity was kind of like very similar, even though it was something we never really discussed. He's, let's see, how old is he now? I think he just turned 21. So we're like a good difference in age. I'm 35. And, I was always like, well, I know he's too smart to stay with Christianity. He's too questioning, is probably the better way to say it. At least the Baptist form of Christianity that we grew up in. And he just kind of came to me one day and was like, I kind of know your path and it's interested me. And I was like, yeah, I never wanted to like lead you down that. But having Hermes and Hecate in those similar roles in a way, kind of archetype idea of liminal and crossroads, and then the underworld and kind of the psychopomps and stuff. Yeah, I think there's something to that when you say, when you're in the underworld, it's kind of a different mindset. Like sometimes you just decide this is home. I got to make of it what I make of it. And maybe that's the key to Hecate's like presence and stuff, or the people that end up in the underworld and just kind of say, well, fuck it, I'm gonna reside here.
Right. I'm gonna rule, motherfucker.
Right. But I remembered I glanced through the book. I was like, let me look at your contents in the front of it, and just, it's the hex wards. That's what I thought.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm reading your book thinking there's a lot of this that I understand and know, as somebody who's practiced, but at the same time, it's always good to read somebody else's interpretations and their experience with it, because you learn a little bit. And the hex wards, it's like, that is such a good idea. And it's not that I never thought of them, but you, I guess, put it in a way that I'm like, okay, I definitely want to do this a lot. And it's all those like protective, like, to me, it was kind of the idea of like a protective thing that, oh, it's, if you mess with it, then you get kind of hexed. But the way you described it is kind of like the ward is a wall, and then a hex ward is kind of like, this is a wall with poison darts in it.
Right.
And I loved that kind of and that idea. And I started thinking about it like, wow, this really kind of, and I just reading somebody else's, I guess, I don't want to say basic in a bad way or 101 in a bad way, but reading that over and over from different people, I think kind of shares everybody's kind of experience, and it deepens your knowledge and your thoughts and ideas of what you can use it for. So that was the thing I was thinking of earlier when I said there was something that really like got me, that was like, damn, I need to try this out. And I've never thought of it that way, of kind of maybe not even a booby trap idea, but you know what I mean, is kind of like,
right. Well, I think that especially when you're all right, so let's like be honest about the witchcraft community, right? There is always shade, like I mean, and not in everyone in the witchcraft community, right? But like any community has shade, right?
yeah,
And so I think that when you're dealing with witches, you have to be aware that they know the things that you know too. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
like they have the potential to hex you, they have the potential to ward you, they have all this stuff, right? And so I was in a situation with a particular person, and I was just like, I don't really want to do anything to them. I just want to protect myself. But if they fuck with me, I want it to like fuck with them,
yeah,
and I am not well read. So when it comes to like witchcraft books and stuff, I am so far behind a lot of other people. And a lot of the things that come to me are very intuitive and they're from the spirit. And when I sit down with my, book of shadows or whatever you want to call it, um, things just come out. And then I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And then like later someone will be like, oh, I've done something like that. I'm like, really? Wait, people do this? Like I never know. And so I wasn't aware that that was a thing until I had talked to somebody about it. And then because I knew it was such a thing, I was like, well, like, does everyone know? And if not, like, let's just make sure. So when I included that, I felt like it was really important, but then it was also like I wouldn't be true to myself if I didn't include things like that, because who is it that says, Cindy Brennan says that a witch that can't heal can't hex, right? I think that she coined that term. And I really appreciate that term, because like it's true. Like if I can't heal myself, how can I like think clearly enough to hex something? And doesn't that also pertain to protecting? So like when it came to a hex ward, it just made sense. Like, all right, well, here's something to put inside the wall that will, attack your ass if you try to attack me.
right. It's kind of that offense and not just defense
Mm-hmm.
after the fact. And it's kind of
Right.
not because I mean, when you have shade and you have gossip and you have all these other shit, and things can, so it's like I don't want to do anything to this person if they're not
Mm-hmm.
actually attacking me, but my suspicions are they might be. So instead of just unloading on them and making a mistake, I'm protecting myself and kind of like, fuck you too if you're actually doing something. So
Yeah.
like, oh, that's such a good idea, because I deal a lot with, I do more cursing and hexing and protective stuff than I do anything else. And
Yeah.
that's just how I roll. And I do it for myself. I do it for other people. And it's how my familiar works. So to add this into like the kind of toolbox of like, oh, okay, let me play with this and work with this if I ever feel the need, was a good little like light bulb or something that kind of popped up when I was reading it. So it was nice
That's
to
awesome.
actually see that alongside of the stuff. Now, as far as journaling goes, I really have to try to do journaling at some point in my life because I'm just not good at doing it. but there's so many people again, and I love that your book includes those kind of prompts and exercises alongside of tips on spells and how they worked for you. And you like you're a big proponent in the book of using your intuition and your like witch sites, which is great. And I'm sure I know I think you reference it as a damn, now I can't even think of the word. You reference it as a source material, or not, or as a resource, but Psychic Witch by Matt Oren.
Oh yeah.
And that's like a very good thing. And it's like, if you start diving into all the clear senses, you know, I feel like you find your strengths and things like that. But even your examples of things to try to bring those up and kind of strengthen those. But at the core of it, it's just, you already know, it's that knowing. And so I feel like I can relate to you on that aspect of, even before I was a witch, I had that knowing.
Yeah. So like, yeah, I definitely, you know, I put books, like suggested readings at the end of each chapter, and I suggested readings that pertain to the chapter, but also that I'm familiar with, you know what I mean? That I've read, that I've listened to, whatever. Right. And so, how do you write a chapter about clairsenses and not mention Psychic Witch? Right. I mean, like, especially in the current world, it's like, let's not bring up some book from the 80s. Let's talk about the book that's most recent and is, like, you know, well received because it's got good information.
Right.
And I think that, like, you know, even if you're not a witch, clairsenses are a thing. I mean, I wasn't a witch when I was like, oh, I want to be psychic, I want to be clairvoyant, you know, like,
Right.
that had nothing to do with witchcraft. That just had to do with me being a human who, you know, wants to be more connected to, well, what I understand now is your higher self, right? And so I just think that, like, being able to be in touch with that is really important. But then also, um, I don't think everybody realizes how accessible that really is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm ridiculously claircognizant. Like, I just know things. I don't know why, I just know things, but I just know things. And so, like, it was really helpful in school with tests, or like when I'm being lied to, I just know. And then when you really start paying attention to those things, you start, like, being like, oh yeah, but I'm thinking this too. Like, is it my internal dialogue? Does this mean I'm clairaudient, you know, and things like that? Or like, you're listening to the radio and a song comes on and it's the message that you need to hear. This is clairaudience, right? And so when you really pay attention to the world around you and to yourself and how you're interacting with the world around you, you learn that, like, you are using clairsenses, regardless of whether you term yourself as a witch or not, right? And I don't think clairsenses are only for witches. You don't have to term yourself as anything to have access to that. But I don't think that it would be very easy to find a witch. And I could be wrong. And if I am, I might get, like, you know, hate mail or something, which is okay, cool. Send it to me if I'm wrong. But, like, I don't think you're going to find anyone who's practicing as a witch who doesn't experience a clairsense in some way. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. It's and I feel like it, like you said, you don't have to be a witch to have it, but I do feel like it goes hand in hand when, if you're working with witchcraft, whether you call yourself a witch or whatever you call yourself, because you're touching into energies or tapping in and being observant to things that others just aren't. And so those
Right.
things are going to be heightened because you're working with them. That's why I feel like, you know, there was something very interesting in your book, how you mentioned, like, I just don't want to interact with the spirit realm like that.
Right.
And, you know, some people have to shut that off. Some people have to set the boundaries for that. And other people, but I feel like, again, you don't have to be a witch to have those connections. But when you're a witch, those things kind of, it's like a light being turned on. It's kind of like
Right.
you
Right.
see
Like,
these
you're in the
things.
house, you've turned on a light, they see the light in the window, and they're like, oh,
Somebody's
let's go
home.
there. It might be warm. Yeah. It's like
Right.
the Five of Pentacles. There's, like, a light in the window, and they're like, right around the corner, we can get out of the rain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, like, I mean, I think that that's a thing. And for me, when I was a kid, I had this horrible experience with shadow people.
I was going to
And
talk
it
about that
was
because that freaked me out.
terrifying. it was terrifying to be like 5 and like literally what I called the devil, like I still call it the devil, was like on my windowsill. I'm living in New Orleans and there's this like shadow figure walking back and forth on my windowsill. And I'm like scared, terrified to go to nap time, you know,
Right, because
at home.
that's very early in the book, and I was like, oh shit,
Right.
this is
Like,
very
I mean,
disturbing.
it was just like probably the scariest thing I've ever experienced. I mean, I would have to say, like, on my list of scary supernatural things, that's definitely on there. And you know, when I didn't know I was setting a boundary at the time, but I stood up and I'm like, you can't be here, you have to go. And it got pissed and it pulled the shades out of my window. And I shit you not, it pulled the shades out of the window. And I don't know, like, I don't know how to explain that other than just being like blatantly honest and being like, this is what happened. Because like when I talk to my mom about it now, I'm like, do you remember this? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, I wasn't lying. And like, I mean, she seriously, she's like, well, I believe you now. I'm like, okay, cool. Like now that I'm 40, you believe me, but you didn't believe me when I was 5.
Right.
Like what? Like why? Why are you open to it now? You know, but whatever, people grow. So like, but it was terrifying. And then I was tormented until I was like, I think 10 or 11, something like that. I don't remember my exact age. I must say it in the book because I definitely deep dive into the shadow people. I might have been like 8 or 9 around the time that I made them go away. But like, I literally just every time I saw a shadow person, I'm like, you're not allowed to bother me. You're not allowed to bother me. And there are times now as an adult where I'm like, do I miss that? Kind of, maybe. Like, it would be cool to interact. But at the end of the day, like, I don't want that. I don't want to like talk to dead people. I don't want a familiar. Like, I think it's cool that people have them, but I've no interest in that. Because for me, like the spirit that I work with is the source, and I work with Hecate to connect to that source. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I understand egregores, and I like egregores. I don't like spirits, you know, because like the whole idea of spirits or entities that have this like extra kind of cognizance or extra, I don't know, not, I guess extra dimensional would be the word to use, kind of like feel to them, just don't feel comfortable to me. So like I live on this land that my sister and my husband are both like, this land is bad. And I'm like, I don't feel anything. But it's because I like put up that boundary and I'm like, nope, nothing like that's allowed to bother me. You know what I mean? And
Right.
like, and I set it up at such a young age that like I wouldn't even know how to get rid of that now because it's like ingrained in me. It's like my magical DNA is like got this permanent shield and I'm happy with it because I don't want to experience that. But when it
Which
comes
is,
to, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, which is odd because usually, again, a lot of my practice with Hecate and my familiar is spirit work, and then you have
Right.
all the witches that are like, oh, they want it or they
Mm-hmm.
interact with it somehow. And I mean, I'm always doing got Ouija boards, haunted dolls, especially with
Yeah.
the Hex File stuff. But I mean, that's the other thing too, is if you don't want it, then you don't want it.
Yeah. Like, and that doesn't make me less of a witch or anything,
Of
right?
course
Because
not.
like at the end of the day, like it's my path and my path doesn't call for that. Like, I mean, you know, the whole like idea of light and love is given such a bad name. And I wouldn't ever say that I am a light and love witch because I'll fucking hex your ass just as fast as I'll protect you, right? But when it comes to the things that I want to work on, it's very much about, you know, healing myself, helping other people find their healing, um or you know, like creating good fortune for people, things like this. Like it feeds me. But then also, um I just I don't think I ever have the need to interact with the realm outside of my deity because at the end of the day, like my deity doesn't require that of me. And like, yeah, she's the goddess of the dead and she's got her horde and everything, but that's not all that she is.
Right. And she's
She's
got that under control.
multifaceted.
She's like, well,
Yeah. She's got plenty of followers who are handling that. She needs followers who do what I do too. Like that's how I see it, you know? And I'm like, this works. And you know, like I think that for me being like unconquerable is more important than like the underworld. And I think that for me being the like all tamer is so much more important than you know like her hoard and dealing with those things. And I totally applaud people who want to do that. Like, but you would never catch me on a ghost hunting team. Like I mean, like, I mean, the ghost would probably avoid the whole situation because I'm like ruining the whole vibe, you know, like, and that's
Yeah.
cool. Like, that's okay. Like, we all have, it takes a village. And
Yeah,
that's
and
just,
you've got your phone off the hook, and that's fine.
yeah,
You turn the lights out.
yeah,
But that's the thing is, I think you know too. Like your intuition tells you, um, and that's part of your path as well. Like this doesn't interest me. I have no business. I don't want to mess with it, so I'm going
right,
to turn that off so I don't get bothered with it.
right, right. And like, I mean, like my whole journey is about like connecting to the source and understanding that and learning how to manipulate my world around me to fit my desires and to bring them out into fruition. And so I just think that helping other people realize that is a really important thing too. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think I love to watch things. Like I think you guys went to like a bar or something a couple times maybe, and like we're trying to interact with the dead, weren't you?
Oh yeah, we with
Yeah,
Hex Files we go and
yeah,
do like our paranormal, which there's plenty of local stuff, and we're doing it in July. We're going to um, somewhere in Indiana with some ghost hunter friends, and
nice.
then we do the haunted doll stuff,
Yeah.
and then we go look for Bigfoot too. So you know, it's just you know, but that's the thing is like, and even broken down to that, there's so many different clear senses on something like that where
Yeah.
somebody might smell something and another person sees something and another person hears something, and as a collective you share these notes but not one person gets it all at once sometimes.
Right.
And
Right.
it was a very interesting a way to think about the spirit world in the sense of like shutting it off in a way or putting up your
Yeah.
boundaries so that it's funny that you say your husband and sister are like, oh, since all this is like, nope, no, I'm good, no, I
Yeah.
don't see any of it, I don't hear any of it. um but that's a very handy tool too if you're because you at 5-year old you're not asking to see a shadow person, a
No.
devil in your windowsill dancing around
No.
and fucking with you. um
Definitely not.
right, so like you know you hear the mediums and stuff that say they have to like turn off or regulate and stuff. So it sounds like you've been very successful in doing that, but
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and don't ask me how I did it because I mean, I imagine it's all boundaries. Like now in hindsight, I know how to set those things up, but I don't know how I did at 5 or 9 or whatever. You know what I
well,
mean?
yeah,
Like it was just innate. But like, had I known then what I know now, I could have been much more efficient. You know,
right,
um, like it would have stopped at 5 instead of having to like deal with the shadow people after that and things. You know, and also had I known then what I know now, I probably would be able to like turn it on at will. But like doing something intuitively as a child probably set me up to never be able to like access that because I'm so set in that now. You know what I mean?
yeah, but I
And
mean
that's kind
that's
of the whole premise of how witchcraft saved my life also is that like that's why like every chapter it's like my story and if I had known are like the two important parts of each chapter for like what I went through, how I handled it then, essentially, and if I had
mhm.
known then what I know now about magic and witchcraft, how I could have handled it. And then I get into like the whole lessons of it. You right? Like I mean, the chapters are really built out of the lessons, but
Yeah,
the two important things that inform the lessons are what happened and what I could have done if I knew better.
right, and I think
So
that's a good way to put it, not only for kind of like this is what it taught me or what I can look back on now, but maybe somebody, you know, reads it and sees like their kind of path and like how they could deal with it in the moment too,
mhm.
and using witchcraft, because you know it's witchcraft is very empowering, but
Yeah.
um, it's one of those things that and like you talk about like the little small things, the mundane, um, you know, that's just how we live our lives. Like we're not winning the lottery, we're not doing all this shit,
Nope.
we're trying to survive, we're trying to make it through, help out others, and go to work, pay our bills.
Right.
And I loved how it was like you're very down to earth. You're just like, this is what it fucking is. Like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to win the lottery for a long time. Like, I tried so much magic for that. It just, I was hurting myself. I was literally just beating myself up every time it failed,
Yeah.
and it wasn't like pure intentions, and it wasn't, it didn't come to fruition for a good reason. You know what I mean? And like now I know to work small. Like I don't need the lottery. I need this bill paid.
Right.
Like let me figure that part out and then do the work that makes it. Because at the end of the day, winning the lottery is just like having it handed to you. And if we learn anything out of witchcraft, it had better be that you have to do the fucking work.
Yeah, especially with
Right?
Hecate.
I mean, literally, like nothing is going to be handed to me when I'm working with Hecate. Like, period. She's going to be like, okay, you want this? Cool. I hear you. I've got your petition. Like, I'm looking. Now, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
You know,
I think that's
I'll open the doors. I'll open the gate. I'll bust down the gate, right? But like, you need to be there to help me bust it down, and you need to point out the gate, and you need to walk through the gate. And
yeah,
that gate might
I'll
have
put
like
a
hot coals.
right. I'll put a light on
Yeah.
near the path, but it'll be hard to see and you've got to make the choice. But
Mm-hmm.
I love how you put that in there too of and I think that's something that I relate to with Hecate is um and maybe it's my opposition as well to growing up in like evangelical Christianity and that idea
Mm.
of um like Santa Claus, Jesus is Santa. um I never had the experience of working witchcraft and spells coming to fruition without these little, it's almost like I do the spell, these little pathways open up for me. I take them and then boom, it kind of came out. But I've seen the people that are just kind of like, oh, I'm going to do this spell to get a job and they never apply, or
Mm-hmm.
I want a partner, but they never actually like get on Grinder or anything.
Right.
But no, but no, you do have to do the work, and it's not that idea of like the capitalist idea of like, oh, if you're doing nothing, but no, you can't. These things don't want to, and even working with spirits in my uh experience, they're not going to really do things for you. Same thing with
Mm-hmm.
deities. If you just ask and do nothing, and
Right.
then you will beat yourself up and you'll get very uh disappointed or doubt your magic. But you actually have to put in some effort, and you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna fuck up.
Oh yeah.
But I think that's another thing that Hecate is very pushy about, like, well, this is your fucking thing. Like, I'm just telling you, there's a option out there. You have to fucking decide if you're gonna want it bad enough. So I felt like I was kind of led to do the podcast, and then it got crazy and things happened, and it got to the point where I didn't think it was going to continue. There were parts of me that were like, should it continue? And then there's just that like, it's do or don't. Like,
Well, yeah, because like Hecate's like, show me you want it.
right.
Like she's like, all right, yeah, like cool, I'll hand this to you for a minute, and then I'm gonna try and pull it back. And if you fight for it, then you get it, right? Because
Yeah.
she wants you to conquer. She wants you to embody those epithets that she has attached to her. And maybe, I mean, it would be impossible for anybody to embody all of her epithets, but when it comes to things like that, like you're asking for something, you better show her that you're going to conquer, that you're going to be like, that you're going to tame this beast, or, that you're not going to be able to be broken down.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting. And of course, I'll put in a trigger warning at the beginning of this episode. But when you talked about the being under I almost said, I'm trying to remember, it doesn't matter the town, but being under the bridge and doing the belt,
Mm-hmm.
and you saying it wasn't that I didn't want to die, it was that I chose to push forward. And
Yeah.
and I know it's different for everybody, and I know all of that but I thought it was interesting of like that kind of realization where it's like I didn't stop because I didn't want to die. I just decided at that moment to push forward because I thought there was more for me to do. And I just thought that was so interesting. I mean, the story, the little excerpts you put in with your story, it's like, shit. Like, it's very inspiring, and at the same time, like, how the fuck? I mean, obviously there's a lot of synchronicities and things put in your path and a lot of work on your part, but to read that and see like where you're at now, it's like, holy shit.
Right. Listen, like you gave me chills. So like when I was in Somerville underneath like a bridge, Somerville, South Carolina, it's like right outside Charleston. Not the best place to be homeless in, first off, because it's not really a city. It's like a small town. And like I'm like sitting under that bridge, and I was like, I'm done. I'm just gonna suffocate myself, or like asphyxiate, I guess would be what that would be. And um it was like not my voice, not me, but something else just felt like, no, not like this. And I was like, we're done. I'm not going back to this bridge. I'm not. And I walked away and I went to a witchcraft shop and then the witch
Right.
just took me in and they gave me a couch to sleep on. Like, I mean, it was just like once I was faced with this horrible thing, right? And then I'm like, well, I'm just fuck it. And then once I decided, no, not fuck it, a light was shown, and that light led me to my next step. And like if that hadn't happened, I would have never got myself into college. Like literally that like fed into going to school, and then that fed into me moving from South Carolina to Philadelphia, and taking the next steps, and then ultimately moving back to South Carolina at some point and meeting my husband. And all of these things feed each other, and every time I decide, no, I'm not going to let this stop me, the breakthrough comes in. You know what I mean?
Right. And I do like how you add the resources to, which I don't think they were in my version, but the resources at the end
Oh yeah.
for
Yeah.
because it's like, I'm not going to shy away from it, but I'm not going to just like put it out there and be like, sucks, or I'm not going to prepare you. So I think you handled it very well too, in sharing such like traumatic experiences, and then using them as a gift. Like,
Yeah.
I suffered this so that maybe somebody doesn't have to do it alone. If it helps you, great. If it doesn't, but yeah, there's definitely, you can see that like that little weave of magic throughout. Like the witches are there on your journey. So, and you're meant, for great things. But yeah, it was.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. You're like, I'll let you know when the book comes out. No,
I'll keep you posted.
but it's just, yeah, to me it was I gotta be honest, like I can't say that. I mean, people work personal stuff into their books, but it's been a minute. I can't recall that I've read a pagan book with that viewpoint. I'm not saying that people don't go through stuff, like, don't get me wrong.
Right.
And I'm not saying that because they don't, that doesn't make them valid, but the fact that you're willing to share that and not shy away from like, this is the shit I did and this is the shit that happened to me, is important, because there's a lot of people the fact that you were in sex work. I mean, that's a big thing that I think people are kind of coming to the light of, like, we need to be supportive and keep an eye on it. You know what I mean? Like, bring it to the forefront of that. So it was very nice to read and kind of like, holy shit. And I knew, like I said, when I read the title, oh, there's gonna be shit. He's from the South. And we all know how things go down here.
Right.
Especially if you're in part of, any marginalized community, whether that's the LGBTQ or anything that's not Christian on a religion thing, or just being a little bit different. I mean,
right. I don't know. Like, so when I set out to write this, I really wanted to do something that I hadn't seen. You know what I mean? And like I said, I'm not super well read. So like by no means have I read every witchcraft book ever or anything, right? I mean, who can, right? Especially with game, like big game publishing companies like Llewellyn. Like they're just putting out so much really good quality stuff. It's impossible to read it all.
Yes.
But I don't know that I've ever seen that, like a person's actual personal life, even in like blurb or blogs, right? Like, because I write for Patheos Pagan on the Agora, And like, I don't see people really discussing their personal life. They're like, well, this is magic, or other people this or other people that. But like, when is anyone ever saying, hey, like, I did this and I fucked it up? Like, I lit this candle and I put herbs in it that caught it on fire and my whole house burnt down, or anything like that. You know, like, you don't
Right.
see that. People aren't like, hey, I'm not perfect. And that's fine. Like, obviously, you want to have that authority if you want people to listen to you. But I just felt like what gives me the authority to discuss it is, like, it's the proof is in the pudding. Like, here is where I was, and here is where I am now. And it was actually termed recently to me, and I'm going to start using this all the time. And thank you to Kat, the publicist at Llewellyn, for giving me this term. But I literally went from rags to witches. And isn't that cute? She said that, and I'm like, I'm using this forever now. And like,
That's
I
the
don't know,
title of the
like,
second book. No.
what's that?
Title of the second book.
Maybe no,
No.
not the second. Maybe like the fourth. Maybe we'll
Right.
work that into like the fourth or fifth. But yeah, like, I mean, it just, like, literally, that's where the authority is. So I don't need to be all like, oh yeah, everything's great. And I don't think that everybody is out there saying everything's great, but I think that in the pagan community, we shy away from being overly personal with what we share with the world, right?
Mhm.
And that it's all just esotericism and like wooey or whatever. And I'm not that person. I'm here on the earth. I'm a human. I'm stuck in the human condition just like you and everyone else. And here's my flesh, and I do fleshy things with it. And like, unfortunately, I fuck up a lot. And that's okay. And you can too. And it's okay also. Like,
Right.
I mean, that's just like, I think that people need to know that sometimes.
Yeah, and I think it's a big difference in saying like, I'm going to tell you a spell that helped me get my first job versus here's how I got from being homeless to being slightly less homeless to back to being homeless. But then I got, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
where it's just like, this is where what it is. And this is what I'm going to write about it, whether you relate or not, or whether it helps or not. And it's not even that I feel like some of them shy away. It's just, it doesn't like even have to come up in their writing. You know what I mean? Like, some of the books
Right.
don't have to be personal. They're just teaching you like
Right.
their gnosis. But
Right.
so many of us, it's like, yeah, this is my book on how I burned my house down from witchcraft and other
Right.
exciting stories.
Right. Right. And I just felt like, hey, that's the book I need to write right now. And then, like, I think my own gnosis will come out. I mean, like, honestly, how I experience my witchcraft and my gnosis and everything, that's kind of where I want to go with, you know, the third or the fourth or fifth or 20th book. But like right now, I'm like, well, let me do this, and it's kind of a beginner thing. But there are things that anybody, like, you've been practicing and you're already like, oh yeah, that's a really interesting approach, I want to try that. So it does work for anyone, right?
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I think that there's room for all of it. Beginners books, intermediate, masters, whatever. There's room for all of it. And I think that any author can fluctuate through all of it, right? Like, I think that, I don't know, like, who's somebody who, I don't even know names, but like, let's say Joe Schmo, who always writes these like master magic books, then wrote a beginner book, like, that would be totally valid, right?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, everybody is somewhere, and this book, my book, might not be the one for you, but that other beginner book might be exactly what you need,
Yeah, I think there's
and vice versa.
a lot of like a lot of the books are geared towards and that sells, and that's good, and that's what people are interested in, are the beginner type things. And you know, they say, oh, there's a shortage of intermediate, but that's because when you get to a certain point, you're just doing your thing off
Right.
instinct and stuff, and there's some basic stuff that you learn, like you even go into like, let me teach you the gist about tarot. But at the same time, when you're a witch that's been practicing for however long and you feel like the basics don't apply to you ever again, then you're going to miss something, and you're not fulfilling. Like I said, I've never shied away from reading 101 stuff because, one, I am really good at what's the fucking thing, not self-sabotage, it's the imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Not
yeah.
that I don't dabble in self-sabotage, but
Right.
you know, it's the imposter syndrome where it's like, do I know how to cast a circle? Fuck. But no,
Right.
it's just one of those things where I think if you get to the point in your ego and your practice where you feel like beginning stuff and learning somebody else's, insights that's just starting out, like that sometimes that's the best lens to look through because they're unbiased. They've not been jaded by witch talk and bullshit. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. I don't think that magic has room for ego. I think that like once ego becomes part of your magic, you're fucked. I always think of the band Tool whenever I think about ego and magic in the same room because it reminds me of that song. Do you like Tool? Have you listened to Tool?
yes, very much
Okay, of
so.
course. I mean, like, who doesn't, right? Like, that's my
Right.
opinion. But then you find people who are like, I hate this, and I'm like, really? How? Like,
Yeah.
what's wrong with you? My husband hates it when I play Tool. But like they have that song Reflection where he's like, the moon told me it's secret. And like there's a million light reflections that shine upon me. And everything. And he goes into like having to like get rid of his ego and pull his head out and all this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is one of the most amazing statements on magic, right? Because like witches and the moon and not having the ego and realizing that like, and it's a metaphor obviously, but like all these other witches, all these other humans on the planet are just like reflecting me and I'm just reflecting them. So like essentially we're all the moon and we're all reflecting the moon and we're all reflecting each other, and when we learn to take our ego out of it, we can then like get deeper into the truth of the source and esotericism and everything, right? And so I just think that when it comes to performing magic, if your ego is involved, there's no room for anything else. And how do you grow?
Yeah, you can't
And
grow, you can't learn.
no, not at all. Like, I mean, and that's the thing is like, that's why you should always read 101 books. Like, whatever. Like, I'm totally stoked about like Thorne Mooney's new book that's coming out soon. Because it is that next step. And I want to know. I want to see what's in there. But like, I want to read 101 books because I'm like, well, I don't cast a circle the way everyone casts circle. I don't cast a circle most of the time. You
Word
know
me
what I mean?
either.
And I don't feel as though I need it. And so like if I did I would, but I wouldn't do it the way it's laid out in a book normally. So when I
Right.
read these 101s, I'm able to take parts of them and I'm like, well, that makes sense. Like I just read uh god, I hope I don't fuck this up. Jake Richards,
Yeah.
he just
Backwoods
did the
Witchcraft.
yeah, no, not Backwoods. His newest book, it's the Conjure. I just did a review on it, and of course the name escapes me. Um, Something about Conjure Man.
Yeah,
It's like a sequel.
yeah,
I'm
I've
I'm a
seen it.
horrible
I need to get
person.
that. Oh my god,
I'm
there's
a
so many books.
I'm a horrible human for not having the title like right there. But like I wrote the review for it
But
on
you did
Witch
a
with
book
Me.
club, right? No,
So like I mean like I'm out. I'm getting kicked out of the pagan community. Um but anyway, he wrote this amazing book, right? And there's a lot of things in there that I wouldn't use because it doesn't pertain. Like, I mean, there's like Psalms and stuff like that
but yeah.
that doesn't work for me. But like, he talks about covering your head during like specific spell casting and things like that. And I was like, oh shit, this makes perfect sense. This is something that I want to use all the time. And then I realized like I kind of do anyway. Like every time I take my offering, I have a hood on. Like period. Like, and it's just a fucking cotton hoodie, but like it'll be summertime out and I'll put on a hoodie. It'll be sleeveless, but I'll put it on to go take out my offering on like the new moon, And like it just makes sense. Like when I'm lighting my spell candles or working a spell or whatever, like I like to have something on my head. And the whole like covering of your head so that something doesn't get in. It just like made sense. And I never realized that I was doing it or that that's why it's a good thing to do. But then I read his book and I'm like, oh, this is brilliant.
But also,
Like,
you
and
have to keep the neighbors on their toes. You know what I mean? Like you have to look.
well, I live on a good plot of land. My neighbors can't see me, but I mean, still, like if I were in the city, it would be brilliant.
Right. It's
To
like,
be like
well,
the weird
they're either
neighbor.
skyclad or wearing these robes. I don't know.
Hmm.
Um, but no, well, I'll have to do an episode on. I'll have to have you on and my brother Clayton and do an episode on Tool because I can tell you, I've always been a Tool fan growing up, but after becoming a witch and then listening, like shit changed
It's
for me.
totally different, right? Listen,
It's like,
like
oh my God.
I feel
Like,
so ashamed of myself as a Tool fan sometimes because I was like in, I want to say eighth grade, ninth grade when I saw the first like Tool sticker, where it's like the wrench with like the ball sack. And it's
yeah.
basically like a penis, like shaped like a wrench with Tool on it. And I saw that, I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I probably knew some of their songs because they were on the rock radio station, but I didn't really know. And then I spent so much time homeless. Like, how do you get into music when you're homeless? Like, you don't see movies and listen to music when you're homeless. You're like, how do I eat? Where
Right.
do where do I stay tonight? Like, how do I smoke weed? Like, things like that are the more important things at that moment, right? So like it wasn't until I don't know, I was probably like 18 when I really dove into everything about Tool. And I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. But then now that I'm like so much further along, like half my life later, when I listen to Tool, I'm like, oh my God, are they witches? like, like, are they witches? Like, because they're bringing up things about shadow work and like, okay, yeah, like you're talking about fisting someone, but really you're not talking about fisting someone. Like, this is self self work.
Well,
Like you're fixing things. Like,
I have a lot to explain. No, yes, but no, it's like, yeah. And I feel like you gain something when you listen to it, but that's like a whole other episode. But
yeah.
I, it is coming up on an hour now.
Okay.
And it's been a blast talking to you, but
Likewise.
I'll try to wrap it up so we can both get to, because I know you just got off work, and you know that we're going through a gas crisis right now that
Oh
didn't
my
need to
God.
happen. But
It's so weird.
it's been great having you. If you want to plug your book, if you haven't already heard about it through this episode and forgot it, like you do with your books, if you forgot the title.
Right. So, all right. The title of the book is How Witchcraft Saved My Life: Practical Advice for Transformative Magic. You can get it anywhere that you buy books. You can buy it on Llewellyn's website, on my author page. You can follow my link in the bio on my Instagram. My name is Vincent underscore Higginbotham there. The name is crazy, so I know you're gonna have show notes.
Yes.
And you can follow the link to the book there and get it on Amazon. I mean, you can go anywhere. I suggest going to your local witchy shops and requesting them to carry it because, I mean,
The best
really, like,
idea.
right, because then we're helping them and we're helping me and we're helping Llewellyn. So, like, everyone wins.
And you're
And
helping
you get a book
yourself.
right away. Yeah, you don't have to wait
um
for the book.
now,
Like,
and what's the release date for that? Because I'm
June 8th is what it says on the Amazon page. So I'm going with that.
okay. So when this comes out, you've got like at least
A week and a half.
week
Yeah,
and
like
a
two
half to
weeks.
get that
Yeah.
pre-ordered, get it picked up. Go to your witch shops, call them, ask them if they're not already going to carry it. um but I think these local witch shops are doing good at keeping these like new releases going.
Listen, I actually frequent North Carolina because I love it so much. And Charlotte is like one of the places I go a lot. And I know that I'm gonna butcher the name because that's who I am. But the Curio,
Yes.
something Curio, I love Gina. Um, at this shop, like she's amazing. She's the shop owner, and like she has confirmed with me that they will be carrying my book. So if you're in
Nice.
Charlotte, go there and get it because I want her to make all the money.
Right, I think it's Craft and Curio.
Craft and Curio,
And
that
if
is
you're in
exactly what it
Charlotte,
is. Thank you.
it's in like Noda. And if
Yep.
you're in Charlotte, you know what that means. But
Yep.
yeah, we'll have to you'll have to come Charlotte, hang out. Because we've been meeting all the cool neighbors, our witch neighbors that we have
That's
in the
awesome.
South. But yeah, so it's been great having you. I'll have to have you again when your other books come out. And look
Yes.
forward to all the book club and the book reviews. Go check those out at Witch with Me and Witch with Books clubs.
Yep. Go to Witch with Books. If you go to Witch with Books, there's links all over to go join the book club. I highly suggest joining the book club because we have Estrella Taylor, and we have Guion, Raven, and Phoenix LaFay. So we're doing life ritualized and intuitive witchcraft for the first month. And you can choose to do one or the other. Or I mean, I assume if you can fit it into your life, you could do both. Um, but like, I mean, we've got a 30% coupon code for both the books if you purchase them through Llewellyn. I know that Estrella is selling autographed copies also if you want to purchase through her. And then, you know, you can take any of the other routes, but I highly suggest joining the book club as well. Cause I'm like running it. I'm like the lead of it or something like that. I don't even like to put labels on things, but yeah, I'm like.
But I'm kind of like the Oprah of.
I'm not the Oprah. I one could only dream. Those are hashtag goals.
But yeah, again, I hope you have a good night. Thank you so much for coming on. And
thank you for having me.
Can't wait till the book comes out in physical form. We'll definitely be picking that up.